Good morning. I'd like to take this opportunity right off the bat here to thank UND for graciously hosting myself and my colleagues from both FedEx and some of our regional feeder operators, a couple airlines, and we also have some mainline pilots here. My name's Steve Lasday. I'm a senior feeder safety specialist with FedEx, so I actually work for FedEx. My boss and myself, we're tasked with assisting the operators in the management of their safety programs. So we help them with various aspects of that. I also help my boss with the Purple Runway program, and that's why we're here today in beautiful Grand Forks at UND. Part of my tasking with that is briefing folks on FedEx and what we do with our regional, the feeder group as we're called. So that's what this presentation is about. So having given that background, let me go ahead and start right into it. So here I am at Oshkosh. By way of introduction, you'll see our main corporate logo on the left, and then on the right is the feeder aircraft operations specific logo. Beautiful job designed by one of our IT guys. That is me sitting in a P-51 Mustang, and like it says, that's not my Mustang, unfortunately. I've had some Mustangs made by Ford, but not by North American Aviation. So, and that's my contact information down there below. So that's what this briefing is about, though. Basically just the structure and the content and what the main missions are of FedEx feeder or regional cargo. All right. Just a quick overview of some of the concepts of FedEx. You know what we do. We move boxes. That's what we do. So these are just some quick little integrated snapshots of the hub, some of the sorting facilities out on the ramp at one of our aircraft back in Memphis, things like that. Millions of boxes every day. And of course, as peak approaches, like we're getting sort of close to now, the tempo even picks up more with millions of boxes every night going through our major sort center in FedEx, at FedEx Hub in Memphis. Okay, so regional or feeder, what's this concept? What is feeder aircraft operations about? Well, that is a program where we have operators that are contracted to us in a hub and spoke system flying regional turboprop cargo aircraft. And that would be the single engine Cessna or Textron 208B Caravan, and also the French ATR 42 and 72, and also the new 408. We'll mention that, and we'll go into that in a moment. As you can see there, takeoff weight of 60,000 or less. FedEx does not have the operating authority. Those companies that we contract with, they actually do the routes. They own the certificates with the FAA. They're the independent operators operating on their own certificates. And of course, especially my background, safe, legal, and reliable with safety first. And I can't emphasize that enough. And we really do that. Safety is number one for us. Okay, so who operates these? Okay, and you can see the list of the operators there on this stylized map, all the way from California up into New Hampshire. The middle part of the country, Barron Aviation, Wiggins up in New Hampshire, Mountain Air Cargo in North Carolina, West Air, Empire Airlines, CSA out of Montana there, corporate. I mean, they're everywhere. And basically, when you look at the sum of those operators, those 8 operators, they cover the U.S., they cover Alaska, they cover Hawaii, and some of the Caribbean, and basically anywhere within the states we can get these regional operators in and out with these smaller airplanes. There is a feeder program in Europe. That's a whole different structure, but this is basically just on the domestic program. Here's a route map. All right, so you'll see that it's pretty comprehensive. Covers basically everywhere in the contiguous, like I said, also Caribbean, also Hawaii and Alaska. So that's quite extensive. Okay, so as an example, you can see a shot on the top there. That's my home area, Memphis, okay? Hundreds of planes, huge fleet. both the transport category, mainline as we call it, or trunk, which are the Boeings, the MDs, the Airbuses. All the way down on the bottom there's a solitary Caravan sitting out in Kapalua, Maui, Hawaii. So pretty lonely looking Caravan sitting out there. And that's typical of the smaller fields where these regional turboprop feeder aircraft operate in and out of. And that's the value of this, is that we can get these packages out to these smaller airports where obviously the main line, the big Boeings and Airbuses and MDs cannot get to. And that's the whole gist of the feeder program. What does a feeder pilot do? What's the daily life? What is life like for him or her? So here's what we see. A few bulletized points down there elaborating on that. Arrival at the host ramp early in the morning. Nothing crazy, but early, typically a bit, maybe a little before sunup. Their show time, as we call it, is an hour before departure. The FedEx pilots do not touch the boxes. We do not want them touching boxes. It's too risky. We want the pilot to be sharp and ready for the flight operations. We can't risk them getting injured or straining something or getting hurt in any way that would disrupt or blow the flight. They do, however, monitor the loading. They have to monitor the loading for the obvious concerns of DG, dangerous goods, for pre-flight of the aircraft, for dealing with air traffic control, for clearances and whatnot, and also just the weight and balance. So any of the technical concerns that you would expect a pilot to be aware and responsible of by law, by the operating specs that have been issued to the operator from the FAA, that's what they're there for. So they show up, they monitor the loading, they get the DG paperwork from the ramp folks, things like that. They do all their pre-flight, and then they button up the bird and off they go. Okay, so what's a typical flight? The shortest flight in the feeder network is about 16 minutes. The longest is just over 2 hours, about 2:10. And if you plot a bell curve out and you look at the middle of that bell curve, it's about an hour and a half. So the typical feeder flight is about an hour and a half in the morning, and then they leave the host ramp. We call it host ramp or host station, and that's where FedEx mainline gets to. And then they go to the feeder ramp or the outstation with that flight, that typical bell curve of about 1:30, and then the aircraft is unloaded. The pilot does not have to monitor the unloading. They're free to go, and they enter into crew rest. So they're available for that day. Some folks live near the outstation, so they're home every day. Some folks live near the host ramp where they're home every night. Okay, and then of course in the PM, they go ahead and they reverse that. They show up an hour before takeoff again, get all their administrative and pre-flight and monitor the loading, get all that done, button up the aircraft, jump in, take off, and go back to the host ramp. And that's the typical day for a feeder pilot. So no, you don't rack up thousands of hours. It's not like the regional airlines where it's up, down, up, down, up, down. So that's advantage though, and it's a lifestyle. And we'll talk about that subsequently here, but it's a very attractive lifestyle. And I fly with these guys as just kind of a safety oversight, not a pure audit. I don't sit there with a checklist, but I fly with them, and they all love it. These guys have not been sitting in these Caravans or these ATRs for 20, 25, or 30 years for nothing. They do it because they love it, and it's a great job. And we'll talk about the equipment, and we'll talk about some other factors with the lifestyle. Okay, so speaking of lifestyle and benefits, let's talk about some of those. And this is just a montage here, a couple quick little screenshots. There you have a pilot conducting a flight in a Caravan, single pilot. Very nice avionics, modernized planes. We own the planes though. They are FedEx aircraft. So these planes, and from a safety guy standpoint, I can speak to this. They're maintained faultlessly. I would never hesitated 1 second to jump in these airplanes and go for a ride with these guys. The birds are maintained faultlessly, and there's no pressure on these pilots. If they have a maintenance squawk, they write it up and it gets fixed. There is no pressure on these guys to take a bird they're not comfortable with or fly in weather that they're not comfortable with. You're home every night, if you so set up your structure like that, if you live near the host ramp. The person sitting at the desk studying, that just kind of illustrates that you can also be working on additional career enhancing efforts like taking bachelor's programs or master's programs, or doing self-professional enhancement like studying to be a locksmith or working on guns or cars or something, you know, whatever you want to do, you have that availability. Speaking of cars, I'm a car guy, so down on the bottom we see a rather nice equipped home shop there with a lift and nice little project car. A lot of these guys are car and bike guys. Some guys have farms. They work on farms during the day. And the pay is very, very good, especially for the amount of time that you're actually flying and for the equipment you're in. The pay is fantastic. So it's very competitive, especially for the Caravan world, the turboprop world. And even in the larger aircraft, the ATRs, the pay is very competitive. And of course they have a first officer and captains. It's a normal Part 121 crew for the ATR folks. Let's talk about FedEx a little bit. What is FedEx? FedEx is not just a job, okay? And like I say, if you're flying for the feeders, yeah, you're working for the feeders, but you're still part of the FedEx team in a very direct way. And ultimately, if you want to get on board with FedEx utilizing the Purple Runway program, which is what we're here for today, then you will be an actual team member of FedEx. And it's not just the flying, it's the teamwork. There's the driver for FedEx car number 11, Danny Hamlin. He's famous, of course, and he's done pretty well over the last couple of years with NASCAR. I used to be in Daytona, so I know all about NASCAR. I was at school there and worked at the Speedway, actually. So if you're a NASCAR fan, I'm sure you're quite up on number 11 car for FedEx. The young lady there on the right with the small FedEx flag, she is part of the St. Jude Classic. FedEx sponsors that. FedEx is the main sponsor back in Memphis for that. Every year at the golf tournament, we take a Caravan out there. It's a non-airworthy Caravan, but they tow it out there, take the wings off, they tow it out there with Memphis PD escort. We go out to the golf course, we assemble it, and each year they paint the name of a St. Jude patient that parents works for FedEx. And this is, I'm sorry, I've forgotten her name. We've done this for about 6 or 7 years now, and they paint the name on there, and for that whole year, out in the fleet, there's a Caravan that actually flies with one of the operators that has that patient's name on it, and they bring some of the St. Jude kids out, and they have them for a presentation, and we have an award ceremony, and there's a banquet for the family and for the child. And St. Jude, I can't say enough about that place. I've seen some things I'd like to forget, but how these people go in and work every day with these young children that are battling these incredibly scary diseases. And FedEx sponsors a St. Jude Family House. You can see that down on the bottom with the logo. Once a year, we go and prepare a dinner for the families there. That's volunteer. That's always fun. So FedEx is very involved with St. Jude in Memphis. They're world famous, and their operating expenses, I think they're now at a couple $1 million a day to operate that, and they do not charge the families 1 penny. So you can imagine how involved it is to generate those kind of resources to keep that going. And FedEx is very proud of their relationship, and they appreciate us too. Down on the bottom right below her is the Orbis. That's the Flying Eye Laboratory. That's an ex-FedEx McDonnell Douglas MD-10 or MD-11. It's crewed by volunteers, FedEx pilots. It's also maintained by FedEx maintenance volunteers, and that goes all over the world to really rough parts of the country, the world, that do not have established hospital setups for that, and they do training and they help with eye issues for underprivileged folks. So that's another great program. So there's all kinds of citizenship and volunteer organizations that FedEx is involved with. So it's teamwork. It's not just a job. It's not just flying or safety or wrenching on aircraft. This is a small little quick embedded video. I'll run this for you.
E-commerce. It's a $1.7 trillion industry that's growing rapidly. Online commerce is the future of business, so it's no wonder that there are companies who want to be a part of that future. And if you could build a shipping network to enable all that e-commerce, the future would be yours. Here's how to go about doing that. First, get a 40-year head start. That's how much time you'll need to build the massive infrastructure needed to ship globally. Next, stock up on planes. You'll need about 650 of them, enough to be the world's largest cargo airline. You'll need a team of people, about 400,000 of them. But not just any people, dedicated team members who have all kinds of specialized knowledge, from logistics to weather forecasting to how to navigate the back streets of Prague. Next, you'll need locations. Stores, drop boxes, and ship centers. Tens of thousands of them, providing convenience to customers around the world. You'll of course need operating facilities, about 4,800 globally. Don't forget to include giant state-of-the-art machines that can sort all kinds of packages and are fast enough to process about 12 million shipments per day. Vehicles. You'll need about 150,000 of those to pick up and deliver, not just in the US, but in 220 countries and territories worldwide. Next, you'll need knowledge. Quickly become an expert in many specialized fields, including customs clearance and currency exchange. Finally, learn specialization. Form a variety of independent operating companies so that you have enough specialties to help solve all kinds of e-commerce challenges. A ground service big enough to deliver up to 8 million packages a day in the US and Canada. A freight company that is able to serve your fast cycle and deferred freight needs in one single network within North America. An express service that provides time-sensitive service through 375 airports worldwide. This is what it took to build FedEx into what we are today. A massive collection of physical and technology networks that can pick up, transport, and connect 92% of the world's GDP in 1 to 2 days. We succeed by competing collectively, operating independently, and managing collaboratively. And we're still growing. Our expansion of the FedEx Ground automated network creates significant speed advantages, and our acquisition of TNT in Europe will open even more roads for us. So, if you want to build a shipping network big enough to enable global e-commerce, just remember, you'll need 40 years, 650 planes, 400,000 specialists, 21,000 locations, 4,800 operating facilities, 150,000 vehicles, and a whole lot of knowledge to match what FedEx has built. And that's what makes us uniquely prepared to take on the future.
All right, so there you have it. That's a quick overview of FedEx grand scheme. They work hard and they play hard. And I can say that because I've experienced both sides of it. Fantastic organization. They've been great to me so far. They very, very much value professional development. Let's distill it down a little bit now. Let's just look at some of the feeder concerns, the feeder ops or the regional ops environment. So here we see, for example, up in the upper left there, fairly significant amount of ice on a wing. That is not an actual feeder aircraft, but that does symbolize some of the icing concerns we get. We'll talk about anti-icing measures. We have some technology that's very capable at defeating that hazard, and that's something I know about. The other upper right there is a single pilot operation. That's what's depicted by the pilot in the checklist there. The lower left shows an approach obviously into a runway at night with the approach lighting system. So that shows that sure, some of these operations are conducted at night. It's not 100% though. It's about 60-40. So there are a good chunk of daylight operations that are still conducted by FedEx feeder operations. And the lower right, we don't see that in the real world. That's a little tongue-in-cheek there, but that signifies the concerns of fatigue. The way the scheduling is done counters that, and luckily, unlike the FedEx main line, where the flights are crossing multiple time zones, most obviously with the feeder flights are quite a bit shorter in duration. So we do not see fatigue as a huge problem in the feeder network. So let's talk a little bit about safety. How do we mitigate some of these risks and hazards? I'm not going to insult your intelligence. Obviously, you folks are quite adept at reading, but some of the highlights here, technical. Okay, we can enhance aircraft operations with some of these technical things, such as avionics, safety devices, training, flight data management, or FOQA, whatever term you prefer. We have a FDM program with the Caravans, which is unheard of. Single engine turboprop, to have a robust, fleet-wide, system-wide FDM program was not done before FedEx had done that. I'm on that with my boss every month. We have a meeting where we have the gatekeepers, which are the directors of safety for each operator. They call in, we have a teleconference, we go through the data, we trend it, we analyze, and then that data and those results is pushed back into the system, and they enhance their operational safety from what we learn. Safety management, huge initiative in the industry and has been now for quite some time. The operators all have an SMS program. The Part 121 operators in the ATR, by regulations, they are required under FAR Part 5 SMS. They have a robust program. And then also the 135 operators, they have adopted SMS components and structures, and they are also working on the SMS VP, so they will have a fully vetted, fully approved FAA safety SMS program. So we're seeing that with all the, we could talk for hours on that. I won't bore you to death about SMS, but suffice it to say, the operators know that that simply is how business has to be, and it makes sense. And of course, for protection of personnel and property, it's an absolute must-do. Nothing's perfect though. If the unfortunate event does occur that requires an emergency response, all the operators and FedEx feeder, myself and what my boss do, we have very robust emergency response programs. I'm in charge of that for FedEx feeders, for the feeder side here in Memphis, and we do drills. The program is constantly being evaluated, so that stays forefront. We don't just let it sit on the shelf and gather dust. It's not just a manual sitting somewhere. We also manage the contract with Flight Safety International, and by design, that is a safety enhancement. It's homogeneous. Every operator sends every pilot, be it a Caravan pilot or an ATR pilot, through Flight Safety International's programs. The Caravan folks go up to Wichita, and the ATR folks go down to Houston. Once a year, my boss and I travel to both of those locations, and we have annual meetings with Flight Safety, and we bring in the operators, and we sit down for 2 or 3 days up there. We sit in on classrooms, we sit in on the simulators, we go through item by item, any concerns. So it's a living, breathing initiative that every year gets attention, and we make sure that Flight Safety is upholding their part of the deal to provide state-of-the-art manufacturer specific, Caravan or ATR training to both recurrent pilots and brand new hire pilots. And then other specialized training, we'll talk about that. All right, so what is our relationship? FedEx Feeder Safety. We are a go-between. We facilitate, we're a force multiplier. We take all these technical initiatives that we just talked about, the training initiatives, we share that with the operators and we push it back to them. So it's homogeneous, everybody's on the same sheet of music, and the benefits are incredible. That way, there's no anomalies, there's no kind of outliers or flyers. Everybody's working on the same playlist, the same program. The planes are basically being flown the way the manufacturer wants them flown with the oversight from the FAA, because of course, this group of operators holds the operating certificates. FDM, I won't go into detail, but we talked about that a little bit. So this is just a quick little blurb about the benefits of FDM, how it works, FOQA or FDM, and it provides an increased aviation safety through the data that is recorded from these routine flight ops. All right, and the idea is to identify the risk proactively before an event. And that's the value of FDM. And we go through this every month with our FDM steering committee. All right, it breaks that chain. This is a shot of the equipment. It's from a company called Appareo. The program's called the Vision 1000. It was originally developed for the medevac helicopter world, and we've adapted it for use. It's a small unit that sits up on the ceiling of the Caravan. It records video. We don't see that, the operators see that, but we get an aggregated, de-identified bundle of data every week. We compile it at a monthly basis and then go through it with the operators. There it is, sitting in the top of a Caravan. So that shows what it looks like. And this is in service with all the Caravan operators now. It's a fantastic program. Appareo's been very supportive. They wanted this thing to work. They worked hard. We work hard to keep it working and to learn the lessons, get the information out there, and enhance safety from the data that we look at. This is the software. It's called Alerts, flight analysis software. And there you can see a screenshot. That's just a momentary second of a flight. And it has a draped curtain flight path over the sky down on a Google Earth layout with the instruments arrayed down on the bottom. Now the directors of safety, they're the gatekeepers, and they can watch the actual video. We do not. Like I said, we do not want to see that. We don't need to see that. But the operators, each gatekeeper is their director of safety, and they can sit there and analyze these flights in detail. Speaking of the aircraft, all right, years ago, FedEx on their own took it upon themselves to upgrade the avionics. The top picture there shows the legacy Caravan C208B panel with the what's called steam gauges, as you folks know. We upgraded it to the Garmin G600. Basically, the G600 suite is the G1000, and if you were to take the primary flight display, the PFD, and cut it in half, that's what looks like the G600 looks like, and you'll see that on the left side there. A small PFD, and then to the right of that, a multifunction display, and then the center stack with mapping and engine instruments at the very top, and then some standby analog instruments between the multifunction and the center stack. Much more capable avionics suite, especially for pilots conducting single pilot operations at night or in weather. So that's crucial. And that's FedEx took that upon themselves to do that to enhance the operational safety of the Caravan. Speaking about safety and the equipment, the aircraft have been updated with the TKS, also known as the Weeping Wing. What that does is that has a porous metal surface on all the leading edges. So the leading edge of the support struts for the wing, the leading edges of the wings themselves, the leading edges of the horizontal stabilizer and the vertical stabilizer have this porous metal structure, and there is a tank, a fuel tank, or not fuel, excuse me, it holds TKS fluid, and it's just under 21 gallons. And that shows the switch control panel for various different flow rates. And once this is selected for use, it's somewhat of a de-ice. You let the ice accrete and build up a little bit, and then the pilot turns it on. This TKS fluid is pumped through these micro pores. These pores are about the thickness of a human hair, so you can't even see them with the naked eye. You'd have to have a pretty strong magnifier, but that pushes the fluid out, and the ice then will disengage off that surface. And I have an example of that coming up here. Okay, this is a video. So this is taken from the left seat of a Caravan in an icing situation, and you'll see the ice. You can just see the ice building up on that leading edge. And when I engage the video, give it a couple seconds, you'll see the ice build up. The pilot turns on the TKS system, and you'll actually see the ice falling off because of the relative wind knocking it off. It's a fantastic system. I've actually been on flights where I've seen the pilot use it. It's not a get out of jail card. Obviously, you still have to have icing survival strategies. You do not want to stay in icing very long. The Caravan did have some safety events early on in its existence up in Canada and also domestic US where there were some events. This came as a result of that. FedEx here, like the Avionics, they took it upon themselves to upgrade the aircraft with this TKS system. It's a fantastic system. The pilots love it, but you have to remember, you still do not want to stay in icing any longer than you have to. We talked about other training. FedEx, again here, upped the ante for safety, and we contracted with an outfit down in Lafayette, Louisiana, at the University of Louisiana, at what their center is, the Marine Survival Training Center, MSTC, and they have a classroom and a pool facility where they undergo ditching training. So for our FedEx, the feeder pilots with the operators, if they are traveling, excuse me, beyond power off glide distance, they undergo this training and they utilize the training machine. And I've got to do the training. It's fantastic, and it can literally save your life on how to get out of something that's either sitting on the water or has gone underwater or has gone underwater and rolled, how to extricate yourself from the aircraft. It's fantastic training. Hopefully you'll never need it, but if you do need it, you're going to need it pretty bad. And it's everybody I've talked to who's gone through the training, they love it. And it was a fantastic experience. I'm glad I got to do it too. New aircraft, this is what's coming up. The 408 is now finishing off its pre-production prototype flying. There's 3 of them. There's 1 cargo version. There's 2 passenger variants that are doing their prototype testing now. They're in the home stretch. We hope to have some of these on board right before the end of the year, with any luck at all. We're also working with Flight Safety for the training program and the simulator development. This is a fantastic bird. It's going to significantly enhance our payload and cargo capabilities. It's going to carry about twice the payload that the Caravan carries. Super aircraft. We're very excited for this coming up. Here's the front office of the 408. It's going to have dual Garmin G1000 and XIs. This will be certificated still under Part 135 single pilot. And some of the operators are also going to be standing up an SIC, a second in command program. So watch the trade industry for that. We'll get information out through various pubs, information, trade journals, and also the feeder operators themselves will begin recruiting for their SIC, second in command program for this, to have you sitting in the right seat. Obviously, we don't want you sitting in the right seat too long. It's just enough to get you into the cargo feeder regional world, to let you see what it's about, to let us look at you, to let the operators look at you, to get you into that left seat as the captain, and then ultimately get you into the bigger airplanes, the ATRs, and then of course, if you so desire, get you wearing something purple and flying out of Memphis. Another new airplane, the new ATR 600 freighter, dedicated, not a passenger to freighter conversion. So no more P to F conversions, thank goodness. This is brand new production, brand new from Toulouse, France, where ATR is. We're starting off with this ATR 72 600Fs. I believe there will be some smaller 42 600Fs, and this is also in the final stretch. In fact, they're already flying over in Europe with the feeder program over there, and there'll be some domestic 600Fs coming over very soon. And we're working out the route structures and the training also with Flight Safety on that too. So these are exciting times for new equipment, brand new state-of-the-art equipment coming on board into the feeder network. Here's the front office of the 600F. Pretty cool, huh? I wouldn't mind hanging out up there. It's a beautiful, beautiful cockpit. The Avionics outfit is a European company called Thales, and they are doing a complete state-of-the-art, all-glass cockpit on that. Obviously, the simulator will reflect that. It'll be the exact same cockpit, and we're working with flight safety on getting that up and running. So this is really interesting that these brand new advanced aircraft are coming on, which is only going to significantly enhance the capabilities of the feeder network. Domestic, Canada, Hawaii, the Caribbean, and even what's going on over in Europe also. So here's the world. The outlook is looking even better. Certainly the industry took a bad shot from COVID. That is starting to dissipate. We are seeing, or we have FedEx and the cargo industry has seen a peak elevated cargo loading since last spring when COVID started. So with the increase in e-commerce, with people staying at home and ordering online, obviously that has increased the demand. So in the cargo world, things are cranking. Like I said, we can't get enough lift. We actually bring in extra airplanes to cover for that lift. The feeder guys stay busy. The mainline guys stay busy. So if you're in the industry working on getting your ratings, accruing experience, you're right where you need to be. Just stay with it, stay out of trouble, of course, and get flying and build that time. So it's a perfect storm, like I said, and this was even put together a little bit before COVID. I'm not going to sit here and read each one of these. You can see some of the high points. So there's a huge bubble of guys getting ready, guys and gals getting ready to leave. The average age of the FedEx mainline pilot, I think I've heard like young 50s. So these folks, they are operating under Part 121, and they do have to retire at 65. All right, so there's a huge percentage. As you see there, over half of these folks are 50 or older. So there's a huge bubble that's about to burst. The training world is ramping back up. You see that right now in the industry. The flight academies from the airlines are ramping back up. This COVID thing is tapering off in spite of some new wrinkles with different variants, but it is tapering off and the demand is there already. We're already seeing that. So you're in exactly the right spot at the right time. Just stay with it, keep accruing that experience in that time. Start talking to these feeder operators. You get around 1,000 hours and they're going to start wanting to talk to you. 1,200 for Part 135 and 1,500 or less if you have a restricted ATP at an approved program somewhere for the Part 121 operators. And the Purple Runway program, that's the last part here. And like I mentioned, that's a specific program to get you into the system through the regional, through the feeder operators. FedEx starts looking at you and ultimately they get you on. So right now that's with Mac and Empire because those are the two operators flying the ATRs, okay? Large twin engine turboprop over 12,005. All right, advanced training, accrue the PIC time. There's mentoring. FedEx puts you through a turbine transition course with flight safety. It is not a type rating. I got to be clear about that. That transition course is just advanced crew coordination concepts, high altitude turboprop operations, things like that. Tuition assistance, all right? But with Mac and Empire, and if you look at Mac and Empire's websites, they will fill you in, and there's also a FedEx Purple Runway website that has details too. Here's where they are, okay? All over the United States, each of those dots is a feeder ramp or a host ramp. We didn't really differentiate between the two. And you can see the two big ATR operators, Empire out of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho on the upper left, and Mountain Air Cargo out of Denver, North Carolina on the right. So those are the big two players in the feeder network that are engaged with the Purple Runway program. The scholarships, what I'm here for today, okay, part of these 4 schools, UND right here in Grand Forks, Delta State down in Cleveland, Mississippi, University of Memphis, and Indiana State up in Terre Haute. All right, and that was a scholarship program to enable an advanced flight student to either complete the CFI initial instructor program, the II, the instrument instructor, or the MEI, the multi-engine instructor program. That's a tremendous benefit to have somebody to help you get a leg up on that, get that valuable certificate, get out there, start instructing, start building time. This picture here shows various deans of those schools here. That is on the Memphis ramp. I was there when that picture was taken. And in the background, of course, you can see one of our ATRs, and you can see one of the mainline Boeing aircraft behind it, ultimately where you'll end up. So that's a nice little graphic right there. The scholarship, the SIC program, if you choose to do that, that's second in command, which you'll see more of now with the 408 coming on board, the purple runway pathway, and then of course denoted at the far right there with the transport category, FedEx mainline, flying for FedEx in the big purple airplanes out of Memphis or somewhere else. So FedEx feeders, what is it? It's many things to many people. Me being a safety guy, okay, always safety comes first, and they really do that. We do not push people. If you're not comfortable, we don't want you in that aircraft. If the weather's just a little bit too much or you're not happy with the aircraft, let us know. Nobody gets in trouble with that. You'll be asked to explain yourself, of course, but nobody gets in trouble. Legal, sure, and of course reliable. And they are. They're very reliable with reliability rates above 99%. We track that. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but they're very reliable. But to me, most importantly, safe. So there you see some pictures of some FedEx aircraft, feeder aircraft throughout the various areas. And here's a nice little word map. You'll notice several key words here about FedEx. Safety's in there a few times. That's good. Leadership, integrity. What you do matters, and it does. And it doesn't have to just be the job. It can be many, many other aspects of FedEx too. FedEx is very much involved in the community, like I mentioned with the St. Jude or the Trees for Troops programs. Around Christmas, they sponsor Christmas trees or wreaths for troops, all kinds of things. FedEx is way more than just flying. So that's it for me. Please contact any of these feeder operators or FedEx itself. That purple runway, FedExPurpleRunway.com, there's a site. All these operators, they all have their own websites, so if you're interested in potentially pursuing a feeder career, all right, get hold of them. You get around 1,000 hours, call them. They want to talk to you. We'd love to have you on board. It's a fantastic lifestyle. I've enjoyed it, even being just a safety guy. I'm not an airline captain. I come from a flight training background, and I miss that, and I intend to get back into that to some extent, but FedEx has been great for me. They'll do the same for you. We'd love to have you join up. And just remember, safe, legal, and reliable. So thank you for your time today, and we look forward to hearing from you.